The Panthers might have lost the heartbreaker, but they were very fortunate to even be in a position to force overtime to begin with.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, January 30th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, and it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, the host of the show. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. That is Nich Fairbanks joining me on another edition of Fairbanks Friday. You can follow him on X at Prudential Zero. Shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, just bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if your bonus bets win. So, the Florida Panthers lose to the St. Louis Blues by a final score of 5-4 on a last-second power play goal by Jimmy Snuggerud, where the Panthers found themselves down by 2 goals at 41 seconds into the second period. And after the Florida Panthers got the first goal of the game from A.J. Greer, the Panthers really couldn't carry momentum after that, as the St. Louis Blues really, for the most part, controlled play, got in front of pucks, and the Panthers were already without Anton Lundell in this game, and Brad Marchand gets lost for the entirety of the third period. And the Panthers really, although they found a way to come back single-handedly by Matthew Tkachuk in the second period, the Panthers honestly had no life in this one, as now it's 0 points again for the Panthers. You see 12-4-1 after regulation losses since October, but this is a big 0 points, and 2 of them in a row, especially after those teams who are ahead of them all won in regulation, Nick.
Yeah, so Florida definitely loses, momentum, or at least they lose ground in the race to get the final wild card spot. But, they had a good start. Unfortunately, it came unraveled after that, and it looked like that they were playing a back and forth, odd man rush game, which is not Panthers hockey that we know it. And that will happen, unfortunately, when you have a bunch of players who, number one, are not used to playing with one another on the lines. And secondly, you have a bunch of players in general who would not be playing in games like this due to the injuries. But, not making excuses for that, just more or less just showing how much better this team is when they are fully healthy and they have players that are familiar with one another. So hats off to Jim Montgomery for not, falling bait to the Panthers again. It always seems like the Panthers had his number of coming back and then be able to, scratch a win out. But he finally gets his in this one. And, it hurts the Panthers' chances pretty greatly, going into the next game.
Yeah, and for this one, they got the first 4 shots of the game, and then one of them actually resulting in a goal for the Panthers there. And then what happens? They St. Louis scores on their very first shot of the game, where it's a puck off the skate on Gustav Forsling, and then Uvis Belinskis is coming there to support. And then it's funny because the 2 goal scorers, the first 2 goals for the Blues, Jake Neighbors and Jordan Kyrou, both of them were game time decisions, and they were a day-to-day status. And then they come in and they're impactful right away for the Panthers. On Jordan Kyrou is on a nice little pizza by Carter Verhaeghe on the breakout, and then Phil Broberg sets him up quite nicely there. It was a parade to the penalty box for both teams, as 12 combined penalties in the second period, especially. Unfortunately, the Panthers were already down 2 goals at 41 seconds in on a squeaker from Oscar Sundqvist that he got it just past Daniil Tarasov. And for the Panthers there, it really kind of changed when in that period when Sam Bennett was called for an interference that I didn't necessarily understand there, why he was called for that. But we even saw 3-on-3 hockey in regulation, which was an odd one. That was just strange. And there was a point where in this stretch, even through the third period, that Joel Hofer didn't make a 5-on-5 save since the first period, and the next one didn't come until the third. So it was just an odd kind of hockey game. Luckily for the Panthers there, Matthew Tkachuk drew them back single-handedly for him through 2 goals in less than 2 minutes, where intercepts one in the neutral zone, and then Etu sets him up nicely, getting Joel Hofer out of his net, and then just on the power play, with a nice battle from Sam Reinhart, and then he's all alone on the goal line, and then squeaks it through. And then you think that the Panthers would carry that into the third period, and Panthers look lifeless. It wasn't your typical comeback Cats attempt, because usually when they do, they're controlling play, but it wasn't like that whatsoever, as it took them another 8 minutes to get a shot on goal to begin in this third period. So eight minutes before they got the 2 goals that they didn't get a shot, and then 8 minutes into this into the third. So it was just Panthers were not connected. The dumps where I lost count. It's probably more than one hand of the amount of times Joel Hofer was playing the puck and he was able to get it to his defenseman around the corners or and stretch it out near the blue line. But the Panthers didn't have that opportunity to really, with the exception of like one where St. Louis was able to at least stay tight around their crease. But really, it really came down to also the fact that separating the puck, and also block shots, 16 block shots to 7 for the Panthers in favor of the Blues here.
So actually, that's been a common theme over the last couple games. When I was in Minnesota and Chicago, both teams were doing very well in compacting themselves in the middle of the ice. You wish the Panthers could find a way to get around that, but unfortunately, the only thing you can really do is go to the outside, which then prevents or actually limits the amount of shot attempts or the shot quality that they're going to have. So I think teams are starting to zero in on that, because again, they don't have their best players, and sometimes when they don't have the guys who know the situations or can make plays and make other teams kind of double think or double check what they're doing. This is just straight on hockey. Like, hey, just throw it at the net and see what's going to happen. But glad to see Matthew Tkachuk. I thought this was probably his best game. Glad to see he got a couple points in his first couple games back, but just the 2 goals that he got to bring this team back. I know I mentioned it in our chat room. I'm glad I did not have to sacrifice one particular cat of mine. And he's still here, and he loves every minute of it. But it was not enough tonight. And I'll say this about Hofer. He was probably the main reason why they won, because he basically drew 2 penalties against the Panthers, both of them that should not have been penalties on the Panthers. I mean, you already alluded to the one where Bennett got tripped by him and then was called for some reason interference because he fell on a guy's stick. And then chasing the puck behind the net when Matthew Tkachuk was getting it, and for whatever reason trying to get into a WrestleMania with him. So good on Hofer for getting that and taking Tkachuk out of the game, because he was the biggest difference maker. And from there, 4-minute power play, I don't know what to call that at all. If you cannot score on a 4-minute power play late in the third period, let's be honest, you don't deserve to win.
Their best quality chance on that double minor was shortly after, from Etu where there were times where you were seeing the Panthers go from one half wall to the opposite side of the point, and then it wouldn't even be the Blues clearing the puck. It'd be the Panthers clearing it and helping them out themselves. And then they would try that rim around play from that's usually the Barkov spot, where they're backhanding it around. And then there's not a defenseman to go from one point for on the power play to the very to the other side, and then it's another reset. A lot of stops and starts for the Panthers as well when it came to that part of it. And yeah, that 4-minute power play was just an absolute disaster, and it was a gift for the Panthers. To think that the referees also had a little bit of a chance to review that, as well, as Erod was down from former Panther Nick Bjugstad there. But man, just not connected at all. And I will say, I don't agree with the call that Mikkola went to the box, because number one, his skates weren't even in the crease, first of all. Correct. And second, he was pushed into Joel Hofer as he went out of the crease. But I will also say this, that's not the reason why the Panthers lost, because I feel that the fact that they were chasing the game and falling behind and these many mistakes that the Panthers were doing, because it was just the amount of times that they just flat out shot themselves in the foot, which I'm going to get to at least another one when we discuss our 3 duds. But it's just the Panthers just did it to themselves over and over again on the night.
No, they did. And sometimes life is like that, where, you're down on your luck and then you get a little lucky, I guess, swing your way. And I think that was the Tkachuk 2 goals. But after that, it's what you make of it. And unfortunately, they did blank all with it. I'll just say that. And, as frustrating as this loss is, I'm not in the place right now where I think a lot of Panthers fans are frustrated right now. I understand they didn't get help in the standings, but they have plenty of time. They have plenty of games that they can win, and they're going to get healthier. So again, as I say this in some parts of the season, let's relax a little bit. All right.
Yeah, you're definitely more optimistic than I am as of right now. But let's transition over to segment number 2, where we are going to discuss our 3 duds of the game and then the moment when we knew the game was lost. We'll discuss that more next year on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and it's the last call for football on FanDuel. One last Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure that you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building the last same game parlay, this is the game everybody has been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. This is the perfect way to cap off the season and make Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a customer, just bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And I'd like to thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. And if you haven't already, go check out the Everydayer Club. It's an ad-free audio feed for the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. It's an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server. It includes a group chat for listeners of the show. Tap in the link in the show notes to learn more. So back on this Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, as the Panthers lose in a last-second power play goal from Jimmy Snuggerud. And it's crazy how the Panthers didn't even play well and still had a chance to at least get a point on the evening, even for them. But they got the result that they deserved. That's the best way I can put it. They got the result they deserved. That I cannot sugarcoat it on a night like this. Because it's funny. We're going to discuss our 3 duds of the game, and we're going to discuss the moment when we knew the game was lost. But just something for the listeners. Nick and I were texting back and forth throughout this game, and we were discussing moment when we knew the game was lost in the second period. That's when we were going back and forth, because we just didn't see any life for this Florida Panthers team. But more on that a little later. So, which in the segment, which let's go over our 3 duds of the game. And I'm going to go with third dud. I'm going to go with Carter Hagee with the pizza that allowed for the St. Louis Blues to get that second goal of the game, to have them at 2 unanswered goals. Ovis Belinskis with the failed support that resulted in the first goal for the St. Louis Blues as well. And the #1 dud, I'm going to go with Sam Bennett. 0 shots on goal. And then also on the Jonathan Berggren goal, that was when it was 4-on-4. He had support there from Uvis near him on the blue line, and then Ekblad near the half wall. him being a left-handed shot and feeling that pressure already from Justin Falk, I believe it was. Yes, it was Justin Falk. He had a chance to back that off the boards to chip it and at least give Aaron Ekblad an opportunity to at least get it back down low. And also honorable mention, Daniil Tarasov didn't play the worst game, but that one from Oskar Sundqvist was that took really the Panthers really out of it. But I thought that it wasn't Tarasov's worst game, so he's going to be at least an honorable mention. He's not scotch free in this one, but so he deserves some criticism.
So I am going to defer the goaltending for this game and actually the last couple games, because listen, the team is not going to win, and wins from goalie stats is not a real thing. And if the team is going to continue to play like they do, it's not going to be the goalie's fault. If you look at stats, it's the reason why the numbers look the way they do is because the Panthers are elite at suppressing shots. So yeah, Bob or Tarasov might not get a ton of shots against them, and some of them are going to go in. But the fact that the Panthers are suppressing so much is actually what's making their stats look worse. So my 3 duds. I'm going to go for the heater on this one. Sam Bennett's going to be my 3rd dud. Absolutely hate him on the power play right now. All he does is shoot, and when he does, he thinks he's, Ovechkin in his office, always shooting it over the net and never making contact. Second dud is going to be Uvis as well. After his contract, he had a good game or two. Where have you been lately? And how many more mistakes are they going to allow before they bring somebody else up, which I would love to see somebody else come up right now, give the team a little bit of boost like Villamas has. And then my 3rd dud, or my first overall dud, guy I keep whipping right now is Mackie Samoskevich right now. He scored in Chicago and everything, but again, to me, is being a detriment to this team. He's not adding a lot, and he's not being the impact player that we need him to be in his 2nd or 3rd season. I have not seen the breakout, motivation from him at all. And might be gripping his stick too much, but again, pros or great players find their way out of it and are able to overcome it.
Yeah, it's funny because he had a great opportunity after he came out of the penalty box, which, funny enough, they called the penalty on the wrong guy. That was actually for Higgy that committed that penalty, and then they sent Mackie Samoskevich there, and then a nice breakaway opportunity after the Panthers clear, and then right there, and then just couldn't score there. That would have had the Panthers at least cut the deficit to 1 at the time. That was when it was still 4-2 for in favor of the Blues there. And the Panthers at the end of the last game, they had Gustav Forsling put place on that power play 1, and at times they had him on power play 1 in this game for the Panthers, and switching the back and forth. And I get it, you don't want to overwhelm Gustav Forsling on those on the minutes there. I'm gonna look how many minutes he played. He played 26 minutes. The penalties had a lot to do with it from both sides of this, but now that he's playing some power play, a little bit of the power play time in those elevated minutes, man, are we really going to see how gassed Gustav Forsling is? I couldn't complain about him tonight.
No,
I couldn't complain about Sam Reinhart. I couldn't complain about Eetu Luostarinen. I couldn't complain about Matthew Tkachuk. Those 4, nothing to complain about, because especially in that first period, the 2 clears that the Panthers had on the half walls, where one of them was Eetu Luostarinen actually drawing a penalty as well, they were so great as far as their board battles there. Everyone else, a big old F as far as their performance there. But I don't want to go on too much of a ramble there. But the moment when we knew the game was lost, I could go one of 2 ways. It's either the softie that Tarasov gave against Oskar Sundqvist, or the double minor for the fact that the Panthers really had nothing going on it. So I think I'm just gonna go with the double minor, because that was their chance to at least win a hockey game that if it would have been undeserved, in my opinion, because I was literally like this watching on the TV. Are you gonna get it on net? I wish if you guys were listening on audio that you could see my facial expression. That was literally what I was looking. My look watching this. Your turn.
0 shots on goal in 4 minutes of power play time, by the way. I had 2 ideas for when I knew the game was lost. First, you mentioned it, Mackie Samoskevich on that breakaway, not converting. I mean, that would have been huge not only for him but also for the team.
With a lot of time.
Yeah. And I wanted to go with the 4-minute power play or whatever you want to call it. Because again, if you don't convert or don't do anything like they didn't, you don't deserve to win. But I still think when Hofer tackled Matthew Tkachuk and took him out of the game, I think that's actually when the Panthers actually lost the game, because he was the only one that had any kind of will to do anything offensively. So great on Hofer. A+ man. I almost wish Bennington was in there, because maybe Panthers would have gotten a double out of that, because that guy's crazy.
Yeah, and listen, when a goalie commits a penalty, they're not the one to go to the box, and it's the star player for the Panthers, their best player, that's going there. Yeah, he hasn't played much in this season. It's just in his 4th or 5th game back from 6th game, actually. This is game number 6 for him. So that was advantage Blues the entire time after that. And then the fact that there was a whole bunch of open ice, although the Blues did score shortly after Matthew Tkachuk got out of the box. But still, man, that is the Panthers really couldn't give themselves an opportunity to clear there as well when they had the 3 players on the ice there. And again, I mentioned the fact that it was a lot of minutes for Gustav Forsling, Aaron Ekblad, and everything from as far as the top 4, especially. You're gonna look gassed. You're gonna look gassed in that part of the game. So I'm not surprised. It felt like the ultimate, of course, when I saw Jimmy Snuggerud score, and the look on Daniil Tarasov's face.
Yep.
Laying on his stomach after that went in, I can't even imagine how he was feeling after that.
Well, tonight was not his fault, and if anything, that was a perfect setup, perfect shot. I just wish the Panthers would have at least changed their penalty kill there, because they were going to him like 2 or 3 times in a row. It's like, and I understand it, because sometimes there's just things you're not going to stop, like the Ovechkin, the Stamkos shot and everything. But this is not them. This is a dude that they were just trying to feed, and finally a pass got across, and there was nothing that Daniil could do. I almost feel bad, because I think Reinhart was on the ice, and he couldn't get off because he tried to kill more of the penalty, and he allowed the puck to be taken back into the offensive zone and just couldn't get off the ice then. So definitely not Daniil's fault. I can definitely feel for him, because listen, this game was such a roller coaster of emotions, whether, we score, first couple of minutes in, and then we lose the lead, and then St. Louis takes a 2-1 lead, and then a 3-1 lead, and then we come all the way back. You thought that they're going to be able to squeak, and he wanted to just get a point, at least get a point, and then to unfortunately give that one up with 7 seconds. It happens. I mean, last point I'll make, look what Vinny Trocheck did to St. Louis,
right before the shutdown. Right before.
So yeah. Maybe the hockey guys are like, hey, you know what? Tonight's going to be that night. So here's some retribution for you.
March 9th, 2020. What a day for that to happen.
Yeah.
So, and it goes all reverse on the Panthers there for the Panthers. Now their 2-game winning streak in St. Louis comes to an end, and now the Panthers, it's a quick 3-game homestand, but man, will they need a miracle run to at least make it to the playoffs. And now we discuss what now, and we'll also give an injury update on Marchand next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communication is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, QUO, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing ever gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. And Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next step. So details now never slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo is the number one rated business phone system on G2, trusted for over 90,000 businesses and solo operators to growing teams. Make this a year of where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off of your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNHL. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNHL. Quo, no missed calls, no miss customers. Third and final segment here on this Friday, January 30th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So, the update on Brad Marchand is there is no update on Brad Marchand from Rob Dara of FloridaPanthers.com, who was on this trip for the Panthers there. And let's not forget, he missed 7 games due to that. I don't know if it's anything related to that injury that he suffered in Toronto weeks ago. And if it's that same one, maybe his Olympics is in jeopardy. Who knows? I hard to say right now. And injury update from Lundell from the Utah game, day to day, they think he'll be fine, and then he ends up not playing. Does this get more difficult and more of a mountain to climb? And it feels like the Panthers would need a miracle now at this point. And I never really mentioned this on the show, but now that the Panthers I'm looking at the standings right in front of me. 8 points. Yeah, 2 games in hand on Boston. And let's go back to 2018, 2019, Bob Bugner era, where what was Josh and Frank saying so many times when the Panthers had those games in hand? You got to win those games in hand. And even if the Panthers would be 4 back, they don't have the regulation win tiebreaker anymore now that Boston won against Philadelphia, who was on the second end of a back-to-back. And I'm now starting to have the conversation. I think it's not over. Absolutely, it's not over. But now we spoke about 3 or 4 wins in a row for the Panthers weeks ago. But now it feels like anywhere between 5 to 8 that the Panthers would have to do in order to have any chance to get in. And that game against Boston next Wednesday, there's no way that you could come out without a regulation win. Zero way that they can come out of that anything other than a regulation win. So I'm interested to see how Money Puck is going to look like tomorrow when we refresh the page on the Panthers' playoff chances.
So I am not the doom and gloom guy. I'm going to say that, over the last week, I think them being on a 3-game winning streak. I mean, we're all elated and like, hey, they're putting it together. They're going to go on this run. And then you have this 2-game, I guess car accident that, if you want to call it that. The next couple games, they could definitely win, and we'll be having the conversation of like, okay, they're putting it together, they're going to do this. But the big thing that for me is that as long as they go into the Olympic break and they have a few games won under their belt as far as like a streak goes, I don't think it's going to cool them off. It's going to be about getting healthy and being ready for the final 27 games of the season. So I hate for Brad Marchand to be hurt again. I really hope it's not enough to keep him out of the Olympics. As a Panthers fan, it would be selfish for me to say like, hey, I hope he is, and I hope he doesn't play because he needs rest or he needs to be healthy. But from one human being to another, it's a pride thing to really represent your country and represent well in the sport that you are a professional in and that you love. So same thing with Seth Jones. I just think the Panthers, again, still need to tread water and have a couple of wins before the start of the break. Then once the break's over, they will have more guys back, and then that's when we're going to see the test. We are going to see the final 27 games, and we will see if this team is worthy. The big word there is worthy of being the first team to win 3 Stanley Cups in a row in over 40 years. So my thought process is if they do get through this and they do squeak into the playoffs, something big is going to happen. I'm not going to say what it is, but if they can scratch their way in, I feel terrible who they got to play first, or whoever's got to play them first.
Everything resets after. That's the big thing. And just the fact that the opponent would see that logo across Florida with that cat in the middle of their jersey.
Mm-hmm.
But it's crunch time has come in late January, early February for this Florida Panthers team. And for them, and I'm with you on the Brad Marchand. These are players who have been deprived of going to the Olympics for 12 years, and Brad Marchand was not on the Olympic team in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
So this will be this will be his one and only opportunity, just like how it was going to be Seth Jones's one and only opportunity. Yeah. And I'm going to keep that same energy that I did from Matthew Tkachuk from Four Nations last year. Because he delivered a cup and he delivered us a lifetime of memories, the franchise owes him that opportunity to play in a game like that. So let's at least zoom out a little bit. But of course, we want to wish them health for when they come back. There's no guarantees because we're going to be back with podcasts during the Olympics. And we're going to talk about Olympic standouts for the Panthers as well. But we might talk about unexpected things throughout that tournament as well. And I hope that it's not for the worse for this Panthers team. So, but at the same time, when they came back from Four Nations, one poor game against Seattle, and then they turn it on after that.
Mm-hmm. But
go ahead.
I was going to say, but they had all their horses. Like, they are able to turn that switch on or off. They're missing a lot of the, I'll just call it the electrical components that would allow them to flip that switch and have it powered on. So either you got to find other parts that are going to make it go and make that switch go, or Bill Zito has to make a move within the next couple days. Preferably for me, it's on the back end. But what are you going to trade right now? What money are you going to try to bring in or move out? But by far, the Panthers need help on defense. I'm not worried about offense, honestly. They'll find a way. Defense is where I'm really struggling with right now, and the goaltenders need it terribly.
Yeah, and you hope that because Seth Jones is not going to come back before the Olympic break.
No.
So you just hope that the Panthers could at least manage it, and then hopefully game 1 of the Olympic break when the Panthers come back against the Buffalo Sabres, that we see him back. And if it is a collarbone injury, it's around that 6 to 8 week stretch, and that solidifies so many things. The entries on the power play would be so much better with Seth Jones there. So that's also something different that the Panthers have now with their personnel versus what they did. And it's like, hey, this is the same position that the Panthers were in at the beginning of the 24-25 season when they started with Adam Boquist as their power play quarterback and having to switch that, Nate Schmidt, you name it. They're back in that. Except this time, they don't have their top center. Their number 3 center.
Yeah. I know. Some people will say the bill's coming due, but I think the Panthers are still going to order dessert by the end of all this. And if it comes to Jones coming back and solidifying the bottom six, and Lundell hopefully being okay, because I do think he's in concussion protocol. I know they really haven't talked about it, but taking a hit after that, I think it's concussion.
Mm-hmm. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, and for me, it's not so much like a faith thing for me. I feel like this right now is reminding me of the 23-24 season where, listen, after the turn of the year, they kind of turned it around, but they still were stumbling over themselves. And then finally they figured it out and they were able to get into the playoffs by a point. Listen, if they get into the playoffs again by a point again, you're in. And as you said, everything goes back to zero and you can start again. And whatever you did in the season does not matter. That's all they got to focus on. So hopefully going into the Olympic break, they have that mindset. Just do the best they can.
Yep, no doubt. And let's see if they can come out with another win against the Jets, where they won 2-1 just last week against them in a low-scoring game. And Bob will be back in net. It's these late matinee games. These are hard to predict. So hopefully by the time we come back to you guys on Monday, we are discussing the Panthers hopefully being back on track, because it doesn't get any easier from here. But Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on another edition of Fairbanks Friday here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Tell everybody where they can find you online.
Thanks for having me again, Armando. It's been a pleasure. And everybody, you guys can find me on X or Twitter at Prudentia0. And let's relax a little bit. It's one game.
Yeah, well, hopefully. But thank you so much, Nick, and see you next week. And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows in the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nich Fairbanks. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.